church planter can walk 20 miles in a day. Give him a bicycle and he can go 3 times as far and be 3 times as effective. Well, hello again. So good to be with you as we continue our chronological study through the entire New Testament. Now, you may be wondering today, David, why are you wearing that sweater when it's so nice outside? Well, the truth of the matter is that it's not so nice outside. Those nice trees you see in the background here are just pictures behind false windows. And we've just got a setup here. It's actually January the 2nd as we're making this recording, and there's snow on the ground outside, and our little studio is a little bit cold. And so that's why I'm wearing this sweater. If you ever want to see a tour of our miniature studio where we produce this broadcast, just go to HeavenWord.tv and then click on About, and you'll see a little thing there behind the scenes. And there's a video that we made specially just for you so you can see what's going on behind the scenes at HeavenWord TV. Okay, we are currently in Matthew chapter 24 and looking at 24 and 25, the Olivet Discourse. Matthew's version is the longest of all of the 3 synoptic writers. Mark's pretty short, just chapter 13 there, and Luke's is interesting. It's in chapter 21. We're going to take a look today at Luke's version, or at least part of Luke's version, because Luke's version opens a key, or provides a key to unlock something that is certainly a mystery in this. That mystery is something we've already talked about, haven't we? The debate between whether this was fulfilled prior to 70 AD, or if it all applies to the very end times, or if it has application to both. And we've got the futurists and the preterists and the partial preterists and all of that. I'm somewhere in the middle. I confess to you that I believe there's definitely prophetic significance here that had application to the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Don't think there's any doubt about that. But I also have no doubt in my mind and my heart that there's application here to the future end times and the return of Jesus Christ, okay? And I think Luke, of all the 3 synoptic writers who record this Olivet Discourse, makes that super duper clear, okay? So remember now that Luke's version records that the disciples only asked, "When will these things be?" That is in reference to Jesus' remark that the temple would be destroyed. When will these things be? And so we begin reading now in Luke chapter 21, beginning in verse number 20. Let's just read one verse and then stop. "But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies," well, we've read that before. We read that in Matthew's gospel, but a little bit differently. Jesus said, "But when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place," and we made reference to Daniel's prophecy and so forth. I can't review all that. So this is a little bit different, and we're wondering, did Luke record part of what Christ said and Matthew record another part, and were they all one sentence, or were they 2 separate sentences? I tend to think that they were 2 separate sentences, and that Luke focused on one of the aspects of, the sign of the destruction of Jerusalem, and Matthew more so focused on the sign of the destruction the events prior to the return of Jesus Christ, particularly in Jerusalem, when the Antichrist sets up the abomination of desolation there. Okay? So when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then recognize that her desolation is near. Well, we're looking back at this now. It's history. It happened in 70 AD. Titus, the Roman legions, besieged the city. It went on for months. Apparently there was an initial stage, and then those Roman armies were called away for a time. And any Christian who had read Luke chapter 21 knew exactly what to do at that point in time. Jesus said, when you see the Jerusalem surrounded by armies, recognize that her desolation is at hand. Again, we're looking at it, from this vantage point. They didn't have that vantage point. Here's what they should do. Verse 21, "Then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains." Well, that's exactly what Jesus said according to Matthew's gospel, that when whoever sees the abomination of desolation setting up in the holy place in Jerusalem. They should also, those in Judea, flee to the mountains. And those who are in the midst of the city must leave. And those who are in the country must not enter the city. Why? Because these are days of vengeance, so that all things which are written will be fulfilled. Well, the destruction of Jerusalem had been foretold in some of the prophets, including Daniel himself, who spoke about the abomination of desolation. Verse 23 sounds just like what Jesus said according to Matthew's gospel when we see the abomination of desolation. Woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babes in those days, for there will be great distress upon the land and wrath to this people. Now, remember that in Matthew's gospel, Matthew records Jesus as saying there'll be a great tribulation such as the world has never seen and never will see. Okay, so that's different. So that's why I'm saying I think that Jesus made remarks relative to Jerusalem's imminent destruction in 70 AD and then made remarks that would not be fulfilled for 2,000 years or more, okay? There'll be great distress upon this land and wrath to this people. Now look at verse number 24. Listen to this one. This is unique to Luke's gospel. And they will fall by the edge of the sword, where there was a Holocaust in 70 AD, and will be led captive into all the nations. See, this is not the end of the world. This is not the Antichrist. This is not the abomination of desolation. This is the great deportation, the scattering of the Jews after the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Oh my goodness, hasn't that come to pass? I mean, if you study the history of the conquests of Jerusalem since that time, I mean, it's just one foreign power after another making conquest. You have the Persians, you have the Byzantines, you have the Ottoman Turks, and the list goes on and on until 1948, finally, almost, 1900 years later, Israel declared its independence, May 14th. As a matter of fact, 1948. And that's when Jews began returning to Israel, and we have the modern day state of Israel today. And it looks like maybe there's a sign that the times of the Gentiles will be fulfilled. Okay, now don't go away, because we're going to talk more about a very big question that people ask about Jesus saying no one knows the date or the hour. Really important stuff. So I'll see you next time.
HeavenWord 7 is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you. Thank you.